If you've been following along in our reading guide, you can pick one up on the way out. It's fine if you haven't, but you're through about 4.5 chapters of the book of Acts. And so far in the book of Acts, good stuff is happening. It's all like good momentum building. It's like the early days of something new and meaningful. If you've ever been part of a small company and you're just like, you're doing great so far. When Corrine and I were first married, we just, felt like we just didn't have any money at all. And so Monday nights was Little Caesars night because Little Caesars had a $5 pizza deal on Mondays. And we looked forward to Monday nights, and it was awesome. It was just her and I, no kids at this point, her and I against the world. Those were such good moments, just like at the beginning of something new. We're in this together. It's hard, but it's good and it's real, and the early church had that, and crowds kept coming to what was happening, what was being formed and shaped. So if you've been reading, here's what you've seen so far. First of all, you've seen a community that is shaped by abundance. You've seen a community shaped by abundance. Acts 2:44, all the believers, they were together and had everything in common. See, it's the language. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone that had need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. Man, I want that, right? I've never read that verse and not thought, I want that. I want our church to be that. I want to experience that. I want to be part of that kind of community and fellowship. And I think it's interesting to note that the direct evidence of the Spirit working in someone's life, shifting their priorities, is that this abundance mindset comes out, and it evidences itself in generosity. And the crowds, they keep coming. Also, what you see in the book of Acts is that the right people are mad. The right people are upset. You know what I mean? There's a certain personality of person that you're like, when they're mad, I know I'm doing the right thing. Like a sibling, maybe, right? Or another driver on the road that's being too aggressive, and they try to pull around you and let you know how mad they are, and then they get stuck behind a slow-moving truck, and you can just see them losing it, and you're like, I'm glad you're upset. That means things are going well in the world. John Lewis talked about good trouble. The right people are mad, and the crowds keep growing. So the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they're mad at what is happening, and that's good. And then the third thing you'll see in these first 4.5 chapters is there's just all these iconic moments and quotes. I have wondered if famous people in history knew that they were writing something that would just last for centuries. Like, did Abraham Lincoln write something down and think, nailed it? They're going to make posters. Did Churchill think, yep, this is going to inspire way more than people during the Blitzkrieg in World War II? I don't know. But moral courage that they're experiencing empowers moral clarity, and vice versa. So you see all these amazing passages. Acts 2:38, that's a famous one, a lot of us know, where the culmination of Peter's sermon, everybody's convicted, and he's like, repent and be baptized. And it's just so clear what the response to the gospel needs to be. Or Acts 3:7, when he's walking up to the temple to pray, and there's this guy begging for alms, and he's like, I don't have alms. Silver and gold have I none, but what I have, I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ, stand up and walk. Just such a cool moment, a cool passage. Acts 4:12, it's so clear. Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. And it goes on and on. There's all these iconic moments happening in the very beginning stages of the church. And remember, Luke loves numbers. At this point, there are about 8,000 followers of Jesus. So this thing's growing, it's getting bigger, it's swelling. It's all building to this crescendo. In fact, you're going to read it in tomorrow, technically Tuesday's reading, the crescendo of what's happening. So the passage I'm about to read, we're a little ahead of where you might be, but that's okay. It's good to read things multiple times. Chapter 4, verse 32. Chapter 4, verse 32. All the believers were one in heart and mind. Now, this is different than what we read earlier. He's just repeating. This is still what's happening within this Jesus community, this Jesus-oriented community. No one claimed that any possessions was their own, but they shared everything that they had. Man, how do we get back there again? Verse 33, with great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there were no needy persons among them. That's impressive. From time to time, and he gives a specific example, from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, and they brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone that had need. And Luke gives a specific example. It's nice sometimes to talk about like, hey, our church is really generous, but sometimes it's good to be like, this happened, this person did this thing. It's very specific. And so Luke gives a specific example. Verse 36, he says, there's this guy named Joseph. He was a Levite from Cyprus, whom the apostles called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. He's going to play a big role later in the story. But this Barnabas, this Joseph, sold a field he owned, and he brought the money, and he put it at the apostles' feet. Wow. Man, that's pretty impressive. Sold a field. It's never even crossed my mind if someone had some financial need for me to be like, you know what? I'm going to get a second mortgage on my house, or I'm going to sell it. It's never even crossed my mind. And sometimes I read that and I feel kind of guilty. Like, man, they had such incredible, powerful, life-giving witness to Jesus through their generosity. Man, why am I not like that? And I experience this guilt, but I don't think the point is to experience guilt. Maybe we should sell our houses, but I think the point is that the Spirit radically rewired the people in these stories. Barnabas was not doing that of his own power. It's because the Spirit had come in, filled him, and completely changed him. I think he stopped caring about the land that he sold, and he's like, yeah, I'd much rather it go to this other thing. I think the Spirit completely transformed people. All right, so you've got all this good momentum, all these good things happening, all this stuff, it's building. It's kind of like, in the air tonight when you get to that drum breakdown. It's all this big moment, and then at the end of that, you get to this passage, Acts chapter 5. Now, there's no passage, or there's no chapters, there's no verses in the original writing. So that word now is a conjunction connecting it to the previous passage. This is not a new thought or a new idea. Luke has been writing about how awesome the church is, how generous the church is, and he wants to tell another story. And it feels very much like a left turn. Now, connected to the previous story, a man named Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, also sold a piece of property. Oh, good, more people getting in on this. That's great. With his wife's full knowledge, you should always check in with your wife, he kept back part of the money for himself. I don't think that's good, but brought the rest and put it at the apostles' feet. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Oh, I don't like this story at all. Didn't it belong to you before it was sold and after it was sold? Wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not just lied to human beings, but to God. Okay, well, that's a bummer. Sorry, you caught me. But it's about to get worse, actually. Verse 5, when Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. Maybe he had a weak heart. He couldn't take the excitement, but certainly the passage implies that this was some sort of punishment. He fell down and died, and a great fear seized all that had heard what had happened. Some young men came forward, wrapped his body, carried him out, and buried him. Should tell his wife, I suppose, but they don't. Verse 7, about 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. The word had not gotten around. Peter asked her, hey, just want to confirm, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land? Yep, that's it. Peter said to her, how could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door. They will carry you out also. At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. Then the young man came in, finding her dead, carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Verse 11, great fear seized the whole church and all who had heard about these events. I'll bet great fear seized everybody. No kidding. My guess is that a lot of us are bothered by this story. I am. I'm bothered by this story. I don't understand why Luke is telling this good tale of the church and its growth and transformation and all these wonderful things, and then he makes this left turn into this story about somebody who's operating from a place of greed. Like, what is that about? It raises tough questions, honestly, for me. One question it raises is, why include this story at all? Like, why put it in there? Why put it in there? Luke didn't have to write everything down. He tells us at the end of the Gospel of Luke that he couldn't fit everything in. I mean, you don't have to add peas to an otherwise delicious meal. You don't have to do it. It never makes it better. Why? You don't have to bring up your hot take at a family reunion. You don't have to do it. Just don't do it. Just don't say anything and everything will be fine. Don't lie. Just don't bring it up. It can't, and by the way, this cannot be good PR for the church. Come to church, you might die. We really do try to limit the amount of ambulances that we have to call during a church service. Second question it raises is, why such a harsh punishment? I mean, this does feel out of character. Now, we certainly read in the Old Testament, there's some tough stories to work through, but this punishment seems harsh. It seems in such contrast to the mercy and grace that Jesus is spreading. Death seems a little steep for a lie. I mean, even in the Old Testament, God describes himself as slow to anger and with boundless mercy. And by the way, this couple still gave half the profits of this sale to the church. Half of the profits. That's still pretty generous. Why in the world would they be struck dead for this? The third question it raises is, what else could get you killed? What else might cause me to drop dead? Where does gossip rate on the scale? I don't know. Shoplifting? Is that one? Maybe that's why adults are always telling kids not to run in the building. Because maybe the adults are like, there used to be more little boys running in the building, but why is this story here? Why is this story here? Well, number one, story's here because it's true. I've said this many times. If these stories in the Bible are propaganda, they're not very good propaganda. If they're curated to try to give you some false impression of things that weren't really taking place, they just included some really odd stories. They're not very good. It's odd. But secondly, and this is going to sound odd at first, but this story is true to our experience. I know that sounds super weird because most of you are like, I have never seen someone stuff half their proceeds from a sale into the tithe box or into the milk cans up here and then drop dead. I've never seen that. What are you saying? It's true to our experience. Think about it. What is the problem at the heart of this story? What's the problem at the heart of this interaction? It's not simply greed, right? Peter says, hey, the land, the money, they were yours to do with what you wanted. You didn't have to donate them. You didn't have to give them. It wasn't simply greed. And it's not simply lying. If it was lying, we would all be toast, right? We would all be gone. It's not simply lying. There's something more. There's something deeper. And I think this is what it is. I think you have this pure, wholesome, transformative movement of God that's evidenced itself in this abundance mindset that is showering generosity on everything. Good things are happening. You have this wonderful thing happen. People are changing. People are growing. Ananias and Sapphira see that, and they say, how can we capitalize on that? How can we, at the risk of damaging this wonderful, beautiful movement of God, benefit ourselves? How can we leverage Christianity for social capital? How can we make this about us? Now, they wouldn't say it this way, but how can we exploit this beautiful, transformative experience and reduce it to a status symbol to make us look better than someone else? You can kind of see like, oh yeah, when you put it that way, it is kind of ugly. Death still may be a little harsh, but it's still, okay, I get it. It is still ugly. There's this absolutely wild story of a Christian YouTube influencer who documented and monetized their family's adoption journey. So they had a child that they were adopting from another country, and they had viewers, and of course they're monetized through the YouTube channel, and they have lots of views through this journey. People were invested in this process. In fact, once the adoptee showed up at the house, he became part of brand deals and endorsement, and even got more money through advertising. The child had special needs. They decided it was too much for them to handle, and they unadopted him. They rehomed him. I don't know what the word is. and then didn't address it on their channel at all. Just tried to say things are normal, and people are like, where's the kid? What's going on? And this went on for quite a while until they finally had to admit we couldn't keep him. And people were rightly furious about that. They were upset about that. From their perspective, she took this delicate, precious, vulnerable human and used him for her own fame, glory, and advancement. That would make you mad. It does make you mad. Now, I know there's probably always more to the story, right? There's always nuance and detail that we don't acknowledge, and I'm not, I feel free to research the story and find out more about it. I'm not trying I'm just trying to get you in the same mindset of something that could be good and beautiful and wonderful, and then you could see how someone could take that and misuse it and exploit it and traumatize another human being because of it. Again, I'm sure there's more to the story, but it's hypocrisy, but it's like deeper than hypocrisy. You know what I mean? It's like we've all had the experience. Maybe it wasn't you, and maybe this is back before cell phones, maybe more a landline kind of thing, but have you ever had the experience of there's some family drama happening? Mom's upset, she's mad, you're in trouble, you're like, oh great, I'm grounded, and she's giving you the what for, and she's got that tone in her voice that tells you like, uh-oh, I pushed it too far, I'm really in trouble, right? And so there, I don't know, maybe some screaming, some shouting, whatever happens in your household, and then the phone rings, and she answers it, and all of a sudden there's all this sweetness and lightness in her voice. Hello? Oh, I'm doing wonderfully. Yes. Just spending some time together with my children, You as kids are looking at that like, what happened there? Technically, right, that is hypocrisy, but that's like in the pursuit of social politeness, right? We don't need to drag this poor person that just called at an inopportune time into the family drama. We get it. We understand why people do that. That's performative civility. We understand that. We all do that. We all make choices like that every day. Somebody asks how you're doing, even if you're not fine. If this is not the person to spill the beans to, you tell them you're fine. It's performative civility. But what is happening in Acts chapter 5 is different. And the only phrase that I could come up for it was, and I don't know if this is even good, but original to me, is malignant hypocrisy. This isn't like, oh, I'm just trying to keep things smooth. This is something that wants to infect and hurt and destroy. Malignant hypocrisy. Sounds bad, doesn't it? Sounds like a bad disease you could get. Well, it is. Here's why this kind of hypocrisy, this malignant hypocrisy, is so dangerous and common, and what we can do about it. What we can do about it. It's dangerous. It's common, but there is something that we can do about it, even when we see it in us. Number one, malignant hypocrisy is dangerous because it has the potential to devastate someone else's faith. It has the potential to devastate someone else's faith. My daughter, who graduated college in May of last year, during her college career, worked in what's called events for the school she goes to, Christian college she goes to. That particular college is in Nashville. Nashville is Music City, and so that particular college hosts the Dove Awards. Have you ever heard of the Dove Awards? These are the Christian Grammys. So Christian music, Christian artists, Christian worship. So because she worked in events, she got to interact with some of these Christian celebrities. And can I just say, the phrase Christian celebrity is insane. That concept should not exist, but it does, and she got to interact with some of them. And wouldn't you know it, some of them on stage and off stage are exactly the same. They're humble and kind and gracious and wonderful. But some of them on stage have a persona. And off stage, when they're talking to the help, like little college students who work in events, they are not kind. They are not gracious. They are not Christ-like. That would be an example of malignant hypocrisy. What does that difference communicate to someone who may be weak or struggling in their faith? oh, this isn't real. This is a cash grab. This is a platform. This isn't real. It has the potential to hurt, to destroy somebody's faith. Let me tell you something. I'm hyper aware of it. I may be one or two people in the room that cares about this to the degree that I care about it, but I think it'll exemplify what I'm talking about. I'm very, very aware of the fact that children of ministers walk away from the faith at a higher rate than children of other Christians. I'm totally aware of that. I pray about that, think about that all the time. I long for my children more than anything else to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I don't want to do anything that would inhibit that or get in the way of that. I also know a lot of ministers, and I have a working theory as to why the children of clergy and ministers and pastors leave the faith at a higher rate than anybody else. I think it might be that the kids see two versions of dad or two versions of mom. They see the Sunday version, and then they see the Monday version. And what does it communicate to a child whose faith is developing when they don't see the consistency in their parents' lives? Oh, it's not real. I see. It's not real. It's a performance. Malignant hypocrisy. There's a quote attributed to Brennan Manning. Bonus points if you know where this quote is from. If you grew up listening to Christian music, you'll know. But Brennan Manning says, the greatest cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips, then walk out the door and deny him with their lifestyle. Well, bonus points over here. He knew right where that was from. It's from a song released back in the 90s. So 1, malignant hypocrisy has the potential to devastate others' faith. 2, malignant hypocrisy has the potential to unravel community. I want you to notice something. As we read through that passage, did you notice in verse 3 of Acts chapter 5, Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan filled your heart to lie to the Spirit? How is it that Satan filled your heart? How did this lie benefit Satan? Why would Satan fill his heart to lie about this? Well, because it would infect the church. That dynamic, if the church became less about abundance-mindedness and generosity and became more about social status and gain, it's going to absolutely destroy the church. It would infect the church. I'll bet most of us, no show of hands needed, but I'll bet most of us have had firsthand experience with a church or Christians who prioritize the perception of being right over the substance of being right. I bet you we've been around that. Does that make you trust them more? No. Does that make you want to get close to them? No. It's all a performance, and it unravels the community. I spoke with a minister from another state, this has been years ago. Their church had gone through this awful, dark scandal. Authorities should have been involved, but they weren't contacted. I was dealing with someone who had grown up in that environment and was reflecting on it and wondering what that meant for their faith now. And I thought, I want to know more about it. So I called the minister who was in the situation at the time. And I said, can you tell me what was going on? What was happening? Why did this play out the way it did? And, people should have gone to jail kind of scandal. In fact, not that you need to know this, I called the police about it, and of course it was years later, and the police were like, statute of limitations is way past, buddy, and I was like, well, got to try. But long story is, this minister said, in the moment we made the decision that the reputation of the church was more important, and they regretted it, they were remorseful, but they made the decision that the reputation of the church was more important than the spiritual foundation and life of this person in this church community. Well, inevitably, the scandal got out, and what do you think that did to the reputation of the church anyway? Destroyed it, within and without. Malignant hypocrisy has the potential to unravel community. And it's always easier to curate perception. It's always easier to curate perception than it is to actually cultivate authenticity, because it's always easier to appear good than it is to be good. You get more credit for it. It's always easier to look good than be good. Number three, malignant hypocrisy absolutely will kill your soul. It will kill your soul. Let me show you how this works. Have you ever Have you ever told a small, unimportant, why did I say that lie? You know what I mean? Why did I do that? Have you ever had someone say, hey, Patrick, have you ever read Moby Dick? Oh, yeah, I've read Moby Dick. I haven't read Moby Dick. I have a copy. Have I read it? No. I intended to read it, but did I read it? No. I mean, Netflix. You see how thick that thing is? That thing's thick. I get the gist. Can I read the Sparks notes? But in the moment, you tell that lie because you want to manage your perception, right? You want people to think better of you, and you think this is some way to get a little leverage, a little social status. I don't have to sell half my field. All I have to do is tell a little bit of a lie. Now, or maybe it's something else. Maybe you've had an argument with your spouse and then you realize that you're wrong, or that you need to apologize to your children for something that you did. Travis talked about that in class this morning. By the way, you should go back and listen to Travis's class. That the ability for a parent to model forgiveness to their children is a tremendous benefit to the development of the children. But maybe it's one of those things. So you've done this small thing, right? We've all done it. We've all told small lies to increase our social status or to stay out of trouble. We've all had arguments where we realized that we were wrong, but we were not done arguing. And we've all been in situations where we got it wrong and we had to apologize to somebody like our children. We've all been in those. That's common. That's normal. That's every day. That's not the problem. The next part is where the real battle takes place. You think, oh, I just lied. Oh, I need to apologize. Oh, I'm wrong. You immediately feel convicted, and you think, I should fix this right now. I should just tell him I didn't read Moby Dick. I should just tell him I'm sorry. I should just tell him I'm wrong. But there's this other voice. No, don't do that. That would be embarrassing. What if you admit you just lied? How awkward would that be? You would lose the upper hand if you were in an argument. Or your children, they would hold it over you. And what if next time you're right and they're wrong and they're saying, remember that time you were wrong? So they're going to use this as leverage over you. And you have this other voice that says, don't apologize, don't fix it, don't make it right. And when we don't, and this is so important, church, when we don't, there forms a small tear in the fabric of who we are. A small little tear, just a little one. Just a little piece. We create two realities. Carl Jung, psychologist, called one the self and one the persona. This is the image that we project onto the world. Here's who we are, and here's who we want people to think we are. Oh, I kept half the money. Oh, I gave all the money. Oh, I read Moby Dick. Oh, I have not even read a book in a decade. The self versus the persona. Irving Gottman called it the front stage versus the backstage, and I thought that was a good imagery as well. The self versus the persona. You create these two different versions of yourself. Kareen's family, I don't think Kareen nor her sister are in here, so I can tell this story. Maybe they're watching online. Sorry, Tanager. Kareen's family could be very vocal. The whole family. They like to argue loudly, but they would apologize quickly, real quickly. And then they would argue loudly again and then apologize. And it was like, if you grew up in a different environment, it was very like, oh, what do I have to do? But they're very authentic. It's very authentic. One day, I don't remember, Van, you and I might have been there. Van's my brother-in-law, by the way. And there was a loud family argument. So I don't remember if we were there or if I've just heard the story so many times that I feel like I was there. There was this large family argument happening. You know, it happens. It happens. Everybody's family has them. And it was right before the meal. And you pray before the meal. And so they had asked Kareen's younger brother, Andrew, probably 15 or 16 years old, to pray at the time. Kareen's dad had this habit of trying to ask the person who seemed like they were most angry to say the prayer for the meal. That was kind of his strategy. I don't know exactly why he did it. So maybe Andrew was the most upset about something. And so Andrew starts to do the normal prayer. Everybody bow their heads. And Andrew just goes into kind of a prayer routine. You know what I mean? You say the words, thank you for this food. And Andrew said, you know the story I'm about to tell? Andrew said in his prayer, God, thank you for the nice time we're having. Just mindless, you just say it, right? Kareen's mother stopped the prayer. She may have hit the back of his head. I don't May or may not have happened. Stopped the prayer, and she said, "We are not having a nice time." And that moment has gone down in family lore, and it gets told every time they're all together. That line, "We are not having a nice time," has become part of the family vocabulary. But you know what Corinne's mom was doing in that moment? I think this is so good. She is not letting those two halves become two realities. She's bringing them back together. We're not going to pretend to be one way in front of God and another way with one another. And I think that's the right move. I think that's good. I think God would rather have your authenticity. He would rather have your anger and your frustration and your sadness than for you to pretend, but so would other people. You've got to bring those two realities back together. I think she's absolutely right. The human being, we all long to be whole, but when we live this way, you cannot experience wholeness. You cannot experience wholeness. You will never be at peace. You can't believe you're fully loved because you're not fully known, and you won't ever experience true forgiveness. Let me show you something that David wrote way back in Psalm 32 that relates to this, and I think it relates to how you've experienced life too. He wrote this, Psalm 32, it says 23, but you know that that's not true. "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away." He's talking about sin. "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away." It was a burden. It was heavy. It was awful. "Through my groaning all day long, for day and night your hand was heavy on me," trying to hold those two realities in tension, and they can't be held in tension. "Your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped," as in the heat of summer, as in the heat of South Texas, right? I don't want to do anything. This is awful. I feel terrible. Boy, does that not describe a lot of people? And I think a lot of people are trying to hold together two different realities, the self and the persona. And they need to bring them back together. And let me tell you, can I tell you, I have a PhD in trying to hold two different realities in one. I have tried it and tried it and tried it, and it is miserable. It's awful. I have been there. My master's degree is in people pleasing. Peter gave Ananias, well, technically, if you read the story, Peter gave Sapphira, for sure, a chance to reconcile the two halves. Is this really the price? She had an opportunity, and she didn't take it. Is this really who you are? Yeah, that's who we are. And they both willingly stepped into death. And I think the truth is, most of us are there to varying degrees. So let me tell you, this is how it works. This is how we get back to it, okay? This is how we bring all of this back together. Here's how you reintegrate your soul. And it's hard, and it's painful, and if you're feeling convicted, good. Here's what you got to do. It's the only way. It's the only way. The only path back to wholeness is to confess what you would rather cover up. It's the only way. The thing that you've been hiding from loved ones, from your spouse, from people that truly care about you, the only way back to wholeness, the only way to reintegrate those two parts is to confess what you'd rather cover up, to dig up what you'd rather bury, to expose what you'd rather hide. And it's going to be the hardest, most liberating thing you ever do. I'm just telling you that. Look at what David went on to write, Psalm 32:5. He goes, "Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. You forgave the guilt of my sin." It's the only path to wholeness. He goes on, or in the beginning of this passage, he says, verse 1, Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against him, and in whose spirit is no deceit. I'm going to wrap up with this. I'm going to ask the praise team if they'd come back up on stage, but I just want you to see this last thing that I think is pretty fascinating. Because you would think, boy, 2 people die at church because they were trying to be generous. That would just ruin things. I mean, things would just die. But this is what the next passage says, Acts chapter 5, verse 14. "Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed the Lord and were added to their number." And I think it's because people long for an authentic community where they can truly be who God is developing them to be, but they can be honest with their shortcomings and their mistakes and their brokenness and their problems and their pain. They can be honest, and they're not going to have to pretend when they come into this community. That's the kind of community that we want to be. Healthy things grow. Let's be that kind of church.